Hello, welcome to Bitcoin for Humans. Now, one of the really interesting things that's happened to me in the last couple of weeks as I've talked more openly and publicly about Bitcoin and invited questions from people is that everybody started asking my wife questions about Bitcoin. I guess she's just a more friendly, nicer version of me. So everybody goes to her instead. Luckily, she tells me what the questions are, so I do still get some input back from people who have seen the videos. But it's an interesting way to do it instead of just telling me. But anyway, one of the questions that came back to me was around what happens to Bitcoin when all the Bitcoin's been mined. So if we just start with some context, first of all, there's a fixed supply of Bitcoin. So there's going to be 21 million units issued. Those units can be issued over a period of time that takes around 120 years. It's a long time, right? So we're talking about something that's 120 years off. It's done on an exponential decay curve. So what that means is, first 4 years that Bitcoin was around, you got 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes if you were mining Bitcoin. The next 4 years, it was 25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. The next 4 years, it was 12 and a half Bitcoins every 10 minutes, and so on, until it's all exhausted and we end up with around 21 million coins. As off the top of my head, around about 18.5 million at the moment that exists. So we're talking about another few mil that's going to come out in the next 120 years. Oh, well, the next 110 years. Okay, right. So it's kind of cool that we know what the monetary policy is going to be for the next 100 years. Just take a moment to think about that, because monetary policy can adjust the price of your shopping. You know, it's nice that we know exactly what it's going to be and we can plan ahead. But the problems that people tend to bring up around, well, what happens when you're not giving new Bitcoin out, come in two flavors. One is around fees. So one of the things that giving out the Bitcoin to the miners does is it incentivizes mining, which incentivizes security of Bitcoin and make sure that nobody can tamper with the system. The quick answer to that one is that a fee market develops to pay the fees based on use of the system, as opposed to this subsidy of mined coins. This is developing. People have concerns that it's going to be too big, too low. You know, this is the point of the market. We expect the market to sort that out. I can go into more detail if people are interested in that. But I think what the question was driving at, because it came from an economics angle, was around, well, what happens to prices in the economy if there's no new money? Because this has always been seen as a no-no. So the trite answer to that question is that if you have a Bitcoin-based economy with no new money entering, then the prices of goods and services go down. Just take a moment to reflect on that. So every year, if you have money saved, the price of everything that you want to buy will go down. Now, to me, that sounds wonderful, but it strangely is a non-consensus view amongst some people. So let's dig into that for a moment and see what those assumptions are that are causing it. All right, so I actually have a blog on my Substack, which I'll stick in the description, which goes into this in a bit more detail around inflation, deflation. But the first point I want to make is that if we take the free market as a concept, the idea of this is that there's hundreds of thousands and millions of entrepreneurs all over the world that want to earn your money, and the way that they're going to do that is they're going to try and make something cheaper or better to encourage you to separate your money and give it to them. Okay, so that's what they're attempting to do. So the natural flow on of that incentive is that you would expect prices to come down. So we should have this constant downwards pressure on prices. Now, what we've noticed over the last, let's call it 50 years since 1970, is that prices have slowly just continually crept up and up and up. And that's a shame. It'd be nice if stuff was cheaper, despite this corresponding incentive where we would expect it to go down. Now, the flip side of the entrepreneurial incentive is the expansion of the money that's in the system. So if there's more money in the system and everybody has a bit more money, then what you would expect is for that oversupply of money to drive up the prices of goods. So this is why we'd see, for me, I always think about being in a leisure centre as a child and spending 35 pence for a can of Lilt, which was totally tropical in its flavour, which would now cost me many, many dollars. You know, that's where my mind fixes that particular price, because I remember that 35 pence to 50 pence jump, and it really hurt me at the time. Anyway, a good example of what you might expect to see that's quite cogent for the moment is if we took the US dollar M2 circulating money supply and we said, okay, well, how has that changed in the last 2 years since March 2020? What we'd see is that a third of all the money in existence throughout the entirety of the history of the US dollar was introduced in the last 2 years. So with all that additional money coming in, what we might expect to see is prices to go up. And I think if you pay much attention to your gas bill, you're filling up your car or your shopping cart, you might see that that's actually playing out. So in a world based on Bitcoin, the money supply would actually be fixed, and we'd get the incentive from the innovation, and that would expect to drive down the cost of goods and services, and we'd expect that to be averaged out at around about this magical 2% figure that you often hear of, like the general growth of innovation in human society. The general fear that's played out here is that nobody would ever spend their money because it gets more valuable every year. Now, for that to be true, we'd all have to be willing to just sit around cuddling our money for years on end, starving to death in the cold with no lights on because we don't value anything more than money, which fundamentally appears wrong. A great empirical example of why this is probably incorrect is that we take the tech industry. All it's done for the last 30 years is just aggressively and exponentially decrease the cost of bandwidth, the cost of compute cycles, the cost of memory, the cost of storage. And we said strawberries, which would have been odd, but strawberries probably have come down in value on a real basis. And nobody has sat around not buying tech equipment for the last 30 years just because their money was worth more a year down the line. People have invested, used that equipment to solve a problem for themselves. So we'd expect to see the same in a fixed money supply world. All right, so to wrap up the question, what I'd invite you to do is maybe consider those two worlds. There's one world where the price of everything just continues to go up because somebody gets free money. See the video on Cantillon effect to see if that's you or not. And then the second world is the world of a fixed supply of money where the price of everything you want to consume goes down. And then if you think you prefer number two, then Bitcoin might be interesting. If you just love number one, then you're probably not going to find much interest in it. So hopefully you've learned something there today. If you have, let me know. Please like and subscribe. That's what we say on YouTube videos. Even that makes me feel a bit cringe every time I say that. Anyway, have a great day. Any questions, please reach out. Oh, and one last thing. I have put an event on Humanitics. If you're in the Perth area, then I'm going to be holding an event at City Beach, 6 p.m, March the 10th. Hopefully going to try and make it a bit of a carnival vibe, and I'm just going to answer no stupid questions, just whatever you want to know about Bitcoin. Yeah, we'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye bye.